Back to the database normalization, starting this on slide 10 here. The purpose of which, yet again, is to remove the redundancies from its tables and make them easier to modify. The way to do that would be to split or normalize bad tables, such as our friendly design number 2 sales table at the bottom of slide, I believe, 4, okay, into one or more good ones, the ones with fewer or ultimately no redundancies. The process will involve identifying functional dependencies or FDs, determining which ones violate a particular normal form, split the table to meet the normal form, and then move to the next higher normal form and repeat the process. The most commonly used normal forms are the first three, including the so-called Boyce-Codd normal form. Okay, so at the top of the first half of the slide. Okay, there are subtle differences between third normal form and Boyce-Codd normal form, or 3NF and BCNF, and the higher normal forms deal with more complex situations, neither of which is relevant for our intra-database class. Because no RDBMS will allow a table not to be in the first normal form, we are not going to spend too much time on this one. The only thing worth noting is that database reports are an example of when you want to have an unnormalized looking table, like the one in the top right corner of the screen, with nesting or repeating groups. So you will get into situations where you're actually reversing the process of placing the table in first normal form, or 1NF, for that purpose. Because most tables we designed throughout the last several weeks will be in second normal form, where each non-key column depends on the entire candidate key, not a subset of the CK. This slide just repeats some of these definitions, such as candidate key, key, and non-key column, and points out what to look for when searching for 2NF or second normal form violations. You need to scrutinize each FD, each functional dependency, and look for these for those where part of a CK, rather than the whole CK or candidate key, determines a non-key column. If you don't have a compound candidate key, okay, one with more than one column, it's typically two, the table is automatically in second normal form. Okay, so looking at our design number 2 sales table, the bad one. Okay, the only compound candidate key, which is also a primary key, is quote ID, item ID. So any FD where either quote ID or item ID determine a non-key column violates second normal form. In our example, FD3 and FD2 are two such functional dependencies. Both have a part of the CK. Okay, FD has item ID determining a known key column item price, and FD2 has quote ID determining a bunch of columns as shown here. Okay, and they both violate a second normal form. So what we need to do is split our sales table into smaller tables where each CK completely determines each of the non-key columns. Okay, so at the bottom, sales 1 table derived from FD2, okay, is one such table. Quote ID is the only CK, and it determines the remaining 4 non-key columns listed. Okay, FD3 becomes sales 2 table for the same reason. Okay, FD4 translates into sales table 3, where the original compound CK is needed to determine a single non-key column quantity. So FD4 was shown here. Okay, and that's basically the associative table, really. Okay. However, the sales 1 table from the bottom of the slide is not in the third normal form, which requires that each non-key depends only on candidate key, not on other non-key columns. So person ID here, right here, okay, in the sales 1 table, is a non-key column, but we know it determines sales person name and rank. Another way to define 3NF or third normal form is to say that it prohibits transitive FDs, or transitive functional dependencies, such as the one that we have here. We have a single one from quote ID through person ID to salesperson name and rank. So what we need to do is we need to split sales 1 table into sales 1 with person ID as a primary key and sales person name and rank as the two determinants. Okay, and then sales 1-2 table right below it that has only quote ID as primary key and the only candidate key that determines a single quote date. Okay, so that is then in the third normal form. Now, Boyce Codd normal form, or BCNF, is a normal form if the left hand side, or LHS, in every functional dependency, or FD, is a candidate key, or CK. So that's a mouthful full of little abbreviations. This is all clearly the case for our sales example from previous slides. There are subtle differences between third normal form 3NF and Boyce Codd normal form BCNF, but they are not terribly important for our intro class. It will suffice to say that if a table is in BCNF, it is also in 3NF. So instead of going deeper into theory, okay, we describe a simple synthesis procedure in most of this slide that will guarantee a BCNF, a process that will result in the same set of tables we would get with a 2NF/3NF procedure we just went through. The process consists of 5 steps, A, B, C, D, shown towards the bottom of the slide, with the 3 middle steps, B, C, and I guess D, used the most often. Typically, there are no extraneous columns in the left-hand side of functional dependencies. That's step A. Okay, if there is a second column in the left-hand side, it must be part of a compound candidate key. The second step, B, then removes any derived functional dependencies from the list. Okay, for us, a derived FD is the one that can be obtained through transitive dependency. The third step, C, then arranges functional dependencies, or FDs, into groups with the same left-hand side, or LHS, and step D makes each of these groups into a table with determinant as a primary key and FK and foreign key, or FK, constraints that connect the tables, which we have been doing throughout the entire class. The last step, E, is really not necessary, but needs to be pointed out as it prevents unnecessary tables, and I'm not going to really discuss it. Okay, so let's return to our sales example and the 4 original FDs shown at the top of the slide. Okay, removing derived FDs involving transitive dependencies from quote ID through person ID to salesperson name and rank reduces FD2, the culprit, to quote ID, determining quote ID and person ID, and this allows us to arrange the 4 groups, okay, with the same left-hand side determinant, okay, at the bottom of the slide, which will then correspond to our tables, right? So those 4 groups become the 4 tables with determinants as primary keys, okay, and foreign key constraints connecting these tables. Okay, if we had at the bottom, we discussed this, if we had this item name as a column, we would have multiple CKs, but still one item table, and that is really not important. We would have that item name as a unique constraint, kind of like with product names in a sporting goods table. Okay. Finally, the very last slide of the class. So in this presentation, we identified modification problems with poorly designed types having redundant data. We learned that redundancies come from functional dependencies in the data, and then we introduced the process of normalization designed to remove those redundancies. We will practice a little bit both second and third normal form NBCNF synthesis procedure on few in-class assignments in assignment problems, and should end with the same set of tables free of data redundancies that can be then used in practice without fear of modification anomalies. So if you made it to the end of the slide, you made it through class. Congrats.